The Mobile Workforce Podcast. Industry insights, construction perspective.
Hello and welcome back to the Mobile Workforce Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Merrill, and today we are sitting down with Mr. Bruce Orr. Bruce is the president of Pronovos, and Bruce has been helping our industry and serving them with his Pronovos product to help companies get better control and visibility on a more accurate WIP report, as well as many other KPI data points that will help you run your business more efficiently. Very excited for you to give this one a listen and let us know what you think.
Well, welcome on the podcast today, Bruce. Excited for the conversation.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So to start the conversation today, I wanted to talk about, from your perspective, what is a project review that's done effectively and why is that so important?
Gosh, I think this has been one of the most overlooked areas in construction from a technology perspective. I got to say, project reviews, it typically has been something that is a frustrating topic for a lot of contractors. First off, some don't call it project reviews. There are several different types of names for it. I've heard some contractors call it stand and deliver.
Okay.
And I heard others say it's the time for PMs to be in the penalty box.
Oh.
And all of that has a negative connotation to it, right? Like, why? It's so important. But let me tell you what it is. Typically, this is an opportunity for contractors to understand what's going on with their project managers with the jobs that they're working on. It's very important because the project managers, they're the ones that are the biggest contributors to the most important financial instrument contractors have, and that's the WIP report. So they come together to give their take on where they stand with projects that they're working.
So what are some of the KPIs that you're looking for in those reviews?
Typically, the most important KPI that executives are looking to try to understand is what is the projected final cost for the jobs that you're running, and that is one KPI that is looked at, but how you get there is different based on the tools that contractors have at their fingertips, and it also is different based upon the data culture that has been created within the firm. So different methods might be a mixture of art and science, right? So it's the PMs talking to the superintendent to try to understand where they're at. It's the PMs walking the job site, looking at open commitments, looking at, percent complete. The methods that help them get there might change, but what we're trying to do is apply more science to it and not the art to get to the projected final cost.
Okay, it's interesting you say that. I think I know why, but why do you lean on the science side more than just the art?
Yeah, well, I lean on the science mainly because that's my background, and I feel like if you want to understand a situation and you have the data to help support the narrative that you're getting from an individual, when there's incongruency, then you got to ask more questions, right? But what we want to see is, where is that alignment with what you're saying, what you're telling me, and what the data says. And when there's alignment, you got my trust. Who was it? Which president was it that said trust but verify?
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. There you go. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why I lean on the science. And also because I think we've heard this many, many times, but I'll say it anyway. Construction just has such a huge amount of underutilized data, and you can get to the science. It's just understanding how to apply the technology to do it and training the PMs to change behavior.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways we could take that conversation, but I think establishing a baseline that's appropriate, and ground rules is probably one of the most critical things, because otherwise it's all art. Like
Yeah.
if you know what I mean? If we can all pick and choose the data that we like to look at, we can, decide how we want to slant the news when it comes to the project's success. But ultimately, what does it boil down to? The profitability of that project. I mean, time is money, so you got to be on time and on or under budget, and hopefully, no surprises later, right?
Right. What's interesting about that is, I think there's a missed opportunity for contractors to understand reasons why there's a variance whenever you're reporting information from the PMs.
Okay.
If you're reporting information, 99% of the time there's going to be a variance. It's going to be good or bad, but what we're lacking is understanding why. So let's start capturing the reasons why. You'll get a 10-minute story from a PM about why something is over.
Yeah.
But how do you quantify that?
Right.
And we're trying to help contractors quantify it, because what we want to do is help them use the science to see the trends and patterns.
Well, and is that the third time that it happened in a row? Right?
Right.
I mean, how's the trend? Is it a recurring issue that somebody just keeps missing, or we got, a bad process that isn't, or maybe a subcontractor or supplier is exploiting a gap or a thing that they're aware of, and maybe you're not, right?
Yeah. And you're right. What I found most often hasn't been bad players. It's most often it's the training around the processes. We have the opportunity to look at many of the reasons why projects might overrun, and we look from an aggregate across all of our clients to try to understand patterns. And when we dig into it, most often it's related to training around things like, how do you manage scope gap, so that you are not always being the recipient of the margin fade,
Yeah. So when you say scope gap, is that scope creep, same type of thing, where it basically expands, all of a sudden you're doing more and different than what you originally planned on and estimated and budgeted for?
Yeah. So you're doing more, and going back to the training, I think many understand the need to process change orders in a way where you're not getting a haircut every time, right? So, what I've also seen is really interesting is internal change orders will be processed, and if you know that if you're a subcontractor or a trade partner, I think it's really interesting. This is kind of off topic, but I'm learning that terminology is changing in the industry, where the specialty trades aren't really being referred to as subcontractors, but GCs. The really good GCs are saying this is a trade partner. Got off topic, but I'm just
okay. Well, that's interesting. Oh yeah. So that's what that reference is. That when I'm hearing that, they're really somebody's calling them that versus
it's really interesting. But man, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
You're saying they're referring to them as something completely different now, but it's really the same thing, right?
Yeah. So the change orders, right? So if you got internal change orders and you're processing it, you're a specialty contractor, you're processing it, 5% less than the margin. If your margin is 30%, you're trying to maintain, and you're constantly processing it at 25%. Eventually, it's going to eat into your margins. The other thing is, if it's an internal change order and you don't have the discipline or the practice to turn around and pass that on to your client, the margins are going to be there. But when you're able to capture the reason for the variance, that's where you start understanding it's something either with this project manager, it's something with, this particular client, but goes back to the science of, and that's why I do it.
If you're looking for better asset management, then you need WorkMax Assets. WorkMax Assets keeps your data stored in a central location. So as your team allocates equipment, tools, and resources, the rest of the crew is aware. Monitoring ROI has never been easier. Get WorkMax Assets now.
Yeah. It's like, you're allergic to broccoli. You keep eating broccoli, but you don't know why. You don't dig into the reason why it's causing a reaction, right? So you got to identify what the root cause is of that issue, and before you can address it, right? And if you can fix it, change it.
Yeah, for sure.
So with obviously, you run and own Pronovos. I mean, you're into the data. Why? I mean, I know this is kind of backing up a little bit, but why are you involved with this company? Why do you have this product? Where does the passion come from? What caused you to try and address this issue?
Man, jeez, how much time do we have? No, I'm just joking.
Well, yeah, I don't know. You tell me.
So I've been at this for about a little shy of 10 years.
Okay.
I was living in Singapore, Southeast Asia, on a project. It was a really interesting project, and it was my first exposure to construction. Working with Citibank, they were building a few pretty impressive structures in Singapore, and they wanted to capture information about the people that visited their centers. One of the reasons why they wanted to do that is because at the time, a few years before this, there was this virus called H1N1. It was the bird flu, and it decimated many parts of Southeast Asia. Well, they wanted to be ahead of things to try to understand if they could grab, I mean, you're familiar with IoT. This is when IoT was, so they wanted to try to get the temperature of the people walking in the building, and they wanted to basically be alerted if someone's temperature is over a certain, number. But at the same time, they're like, wait a minute, we're grabbing all this data. Let's now try to also grab like sound. Let's try to see what part of the world they're from. So I'm on these projects as we're building. So I learned about BIM, and so we had to place the sensors in the right place. But what they needed was a data architect to help flow the information and help folks make instant decisions based upon that.
Okay.
So long story, it's probably too long to say long story short, but it helped me see just how much data was being generated in construction, because I started to work and understand in the course of BIM collaboration what other trade partners were doing, and so while I was on the owner side, I got to learn a lot of the different trades and how they were using information or were not using information. Right. So came to the US and I said, let's try to make sure that that the problem exists in the United States, and it's even worse.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So you come here, you find out, wow, they've got a bigger issue even than I would have imagined.
Yeah.
And so then what?
So I banged my head against the wall like 1,000 times. Yeah. And what I did was I was trying to approach this from purely from a data and science position, and it didn't work, and I'll tell you why. I had to be in the field. I had to go and really understand how certain jobs were being done and the challenges that the people in the field would have using technology. And I also recognized that the way I look at things might not be the way that other people look at things. So I look at data all the time, right? So I could look at a lot of information and I'm comfortable with it. But yet, if I am running a $10 million project and I got to deal with relationships with, like any and everyone out there, I'm on the phone and, I'm doing so much. When I look at information, it has to be simple. I have to quickly understand it. So I had to learn how to modify the UI, the user interface, so that information consumption was a lot easier.
Quick.
Exactly.
Efficient.
Yeah.
And only the stuff you need.
Only the stuff you need. If I want to drill down, I want to drill down when
Right.
it's necessary.
But a quick view, temperature check, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I learned that it had to be simple. And the biggest thing also was learning that you don't the measure of success of the technology isn't how long they use it, it's how often they use it. I thought that things were not successful because they weren't in a particular portion of the technology for 30 minutes or an hour or so. But technology is only meant to support the execution of the projects, not, it's not like Facebook, right?
Yeah.
So I had to learn that. And the only way I was able to learn that is to get out and talk to people that were using the product.
So you come here, you see there's a problem, you know what you need. How did you get from there to here?
I think by just having some luck, honestly. And I heard someone once say, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't know if I can say this, but I worked my ass off.
Sure. Yeah.
And
you can say it if you did.
and I think that that the passion that I experienced from other people in the industry helped drive the passion for me to continue to try to be really good at what we do. It's like, man, I love this industry because there are just so many challenges that we face, and it's not all technology, but it's the average person that, and I'm now speaking from the field perspective. I live in Atlanta, and it is really hot in the summertime, and there's some heavy highway. All right, Atlanta, yeah. There are some heavy highway companies out there that'll be out there like when it's like super hot and humid, and all they want to do, the superintendents, the PMs, they want to get their job done and get home and be with their families. And however, most of them are now saddled with a lot of administrative stuff on top of the jobs that they used to have. And if I could help from the administrative things by automating some of the things that they have to do, by providing them with the right KPIs when they need them, so that they could get home on time, or get home, have dinner, and then open your laptop after dinner, so that you can get up at 4 a.m. in the morning. Like, let me help where I can. I think I've learned to have a great sense of compassion. Mainly because there's a client that invited me to come on their job site in some grueling weather, and I did that, and I spent some time out there. And I was in construction for a while when I was younger, so I know, and so also that passion that I talk about, I believe attracts other people that are passionate, because my team, they'll bend over backwards for our clients, and I think that we often look at our clients as partners. We don't have all the answers, but damn it, we'll work hard to try to find them for you. and we'll work together. So it's a community, and we're here at the foundation conference, and the community here is amazing. I love coming to these conferences. I wish it was more than twice a year.
That's what I always, when I was on the other side of the table and, a third party vendor and not a part of the foundation family of software companies, I was the same way. I'm out hustling and like, man, I wish you had another one of these next month. And I'd get the eye roll and the side eyes and they didn't necessarily love me saying that, but obviously it's a lot of work to put this stuff on.
Yeah.
But the value and the benefit and the goodness that's here to get it's awesome. Like,
it is.
You wish you could, do something like this every day.
Yeah, it is awesome to get to connect with the people. And yeah.
Well, and again, we're all here trying to do the same thing. They're here to get better. The customers, right? Partners and vendors are here to try and help them get better. We're here to collaborate and to converge together, to work together, to try and, build something that's better.
Yeah.
And helps us to be not only more profitable and more competitive, but also, like you said, more successful. Get home when we're supposed to be home. Get back to living and not just working, right? Let's get the job done. Let's work hard. Let's be diligent. But when it's time to hang the hammer up, let us put it down and not have a headache, because we got software and technology and solutions that allow us to do that and sleep well at night, so that tomorrow we can get up and work hard again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're probably like me in a way, and sometimes there's no line between work and home life, but I don't have to leave my family at 4 a.m. every morning and be out dealing with what a lot of folks have to deal with. So when it's over for the day, let it be over.
Yeah, I come from the trades too. So I grew up in it. I was a general contractor for a decade before I helped start this software company. So I'm like you. I was eating my own dog food and trying to solve something that I didn't see being solved out there by others. So that was the genesis of our product. And we're still fighting the same good fight today. We're in our third decade of being around. So
that's awesome.
It's cool.
That's awesome. Let me ask you a question, if you don't
Sure.
mind.
Yeah, you bet.
What's like the biggest gratitude you get from doing what you do?
It really is in line with what you're talking about. I mean, I've had many, many times that I've had a customer in tears just saying, I get to my son's soccer games now. My weekends aren't a nightmare because I can get home early. Payroll's done. It's squared away Friday mid-afternoon, not Friday evening, not Saturday morning, not Sunday night, because those challenges of trying to get that data and get those timesheets and get the labor and all those reports configured and compiled, we're collecting data as it happens. And it's more just a quick review and validation as opposed to just a massive pile of papers to try and track down.
Yeah, I love it.
So yeah, it just makes me happy.
Yeah,
that was what we set out to do, and every time that we hear that that's what we're doing, still, I love it.
Yeah. No, I love that answer.
Get complete project visibility with WorkMax Insight. WorkMax Insight uses predictive metrics to measure trends in your project so you can know exactly where your project stands, how it is advancing, and what needs to be completed to stay on schedule. Get real-time project updates with WorkMax Insight today.
So within your experience, obviously, fast forwarding, now you've got this solution that you've got a way to more elegantly and more completely manage WIP reporting for people and other processes, other KPIs. If you were to put a bow on everything that you're doing at Pronovos to try and help solve these challenges, what would the elevator pitch be for the listeners to understand what it is you're offering and serving the industry with?
Yeah, so I can tell you that you measure our success by essentially our chosen words of saying we exist to protect profits and to protect cash flow. And we're like we're like the hunters that are always trying to look at what are those little things that are going to sort of eat away at your profits and cash flow. And we find them when we create processes, whether it's your day sales outstanding is higher than you have anticipated. What a lot of contractors don't know is the importance of measuring your DSO. So especially now, so right now, money is not as plentiful as it used to be.
Okay.
It's more expensive,
Okay.
to for that line of credit.
Get your
right?
hands on it.
Right. To get your hands on it, your clients might be now paying you later
Yeah.
than what they used to.
Yep.
So your DSO is going up. What is that really costing you?
Mhm.
Right. And you don't need a data scientist to be
Harvard
an
degree.
yeah, right. Let us show you what it really costs you. And not only that, but let us give you the tools to help you decrease the DSO. Pronovos is a technology company that focuses on data to help you see how everything is connected and provide you the tools to combat the things that are jeopardizing your cash flow, your margins. And it's all about data.
Okay. So within that, are there some scenarios, maybe one or two instances you can share that are common that you see? You go in, you've got someone looking at your solution and they're trying to fix something, and you get in there and start poking around. You're like, oh man, seen this a million times. And then you were able to help solve that. And what did that look like?
Yeah. This might seem pretty basic to you, but I see it a lot.
Yeah.
This actually goes back to training, specifically with project managers. And I see a lot of clients that don't have a consistent billing pattern.
Okay.
And what's really interesting, again, it's simple, but when you see the data, you really understand this. When you don't bill consistently and you don't bill the appropriate amount every month, what you're going to see on the opposite side is a delay in payments and receivables,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's going to impact your job level cash flow. And so when there's a gap between your billings
Yep.
and your receivables, who's floating that? It's the owner, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And that impacts, if you're a GC, it could impact you paying your subs. It's so that's the main thing. And what we do is we try to provide that visibility to the PMs so that they know. We give them guardrails. You should bill at least this month. This is the last time this is how this particular client pays you. We give all of this information, and I got to say, what I learn all the time, and what I'm learning now is analytics is not really about data just to have data. Oftentimes, it's a vehicle that you use to provide dialogue and have conversations with people. Okay. So if you got a client that is not paying you according to your contractual agreement, grab this dashboard and say, listen, I just want to ask you, this is what we've been experiencing. If this is what we need to experience in the future, then let us know so that we can be proactive.
Wow.
Yeah.
You can get that cash flow somewhere else if you're not going to get it, or quit doing work for them.
Or you might need to increase the margin.
That's right.
For that client.
Yep. Or the frequency in billing, and say, we're going to do this, but we have to bill you twice a month.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. See, but the point is, that's one of the most common things I've seen is showing the behavior. And what's interesting is that behavior is typically not one project manager. If it's a medium-sized company with multiple project managers, you'll see that behavior across.
Yeah, systemically. Right?
Yes. Okay. So where did it come from?
Yeah,
it came from the top somewhere.
Bad habits that were exponentially, repeated.
Yeah. But the owner of the company, they don't want that. They want you to.
They don't.
Yeah.
even if that's what they're choosing because of the way they were managing it, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that.
People do what you tolerate,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I believe that, I love that. Someone once told me you need to know what you will tolerate and what is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And I think that you could tolerate that type of behavior in the boom times of construction.
Yeah.
When your backlog is dwindling and cash is expensive, you need to start changing behavior. And the best way to do that is through visuals and data.
But the data is fascinating to me, and just being better. I mean, I just play little games trying to figure out how to be better, and I'd make more money when I did it. So then it was like, okay, gamify this thing to where, wow, I'm earning 60, 70, 80 bucks an hour because now I've changed this process. I realized this thing was so repetitive. It's like, well, I'm going to do all those at once. I'm not moving the saw blade. I'm going to make 83 right-hand cuts.
Yeah.
Right in a row. And then I'm done. And I don't ever have to touch that saw again.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to do all my left-hand cuts. I'm going to make 83 of those.
Yeah.
And then I'm done. And now I got all my stuff and I got it organized and I just go nail it all in. And it's like, wow, I was mass producing the, trim carpentry and just out in the garage of a job that I was doing, or, just trying to figure out how can I be faster and better and not waste so much time and thought.
Yeah.
And so
what you're talking about is kind of interesting. It's I mean, manufacturing, they do it all the time, like whether you apply some type of Six Sigma principle to it, right?
Lean manufacturing.
Yeah. So,
but that was just self-diagnosed, self-administered, self-taught, because it's like, why am I wasting my time doing this and doing that? But all that led to, looking at the project and seeing, payroll is miserable. The hours are off at best. I mean, it's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
We're working 33 hours a week, not 47 with overtime, right? If you really look at productivity. And so just nailing that back down and reeling it in, and then putting a tool in place that enforces accuracy, and then the right tool. And I think that's what software and technology are trying to do, is how do we give our teams better tools that actually can help them do their job appropriately and easier and more accurately and more timely. And then we can all have more confidence. I'm paying the right check, you're receiving the right check, the subcontractors getting the right check, the materials are all covered. Everybody's plan is going to work.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with that?
Yeah. I love it. I would love for us to get to a place in the industry where there's a lot more transparency.
Yeah.
I think, like, within my company, I try to be as transparent as possible, almost sometimes to a fault. I read this book that the name of the book escapes me. It'll come in a moment, but it was talking about radical transparency, and I think that the reason why we haven't witnessed a great amount of efficiency in industry, specifically, I've spent a lot of my time on the financial component, right? Not necessarily operations, but I mean, the dollars it makes a lot of, that's why we do it, but we are not as efficient as we should be when you consider the amount of money that has went into this industry and investments to make us better. Right. Why is that difference like so little? I think it's because of the transparency. If I know that you are a specialty contractor and you tell me, hey, my margins are 35% and I'm a GC, I should be able to say, you know what? Okay, cool. My margin is about 4%. Let's try to make sure we all get there. But there's so much BS that goes on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. I feel like, I hope that we can start having more transparency and be collaborative, because we all talk about this being a relationship oriented business industry. But there's just some relationships that that don't help each other be the best that they can be.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. They, famous podcaster, well-known Joe Rogan, he always talks about there's enough pie for everybody.
Yeah.
And if we would just realize that it's not a limited resource, the pie will get bigger. We just need to invite more people, and that competition, that natural people really putting their best foot forward will create opportunity for those that really want to work hard and be diligent and deserve success because they put the work in, right? They took the risk and they put the work in to make sure that it worked. And I think that's what it's all about. So it's not the hokey pokey.
That's right.
Well, so in closing, I mean, what would you leave the listeners with and hope that they take away from our conversation other than some of our shenanigans?
I think I would say if you are a contractor and you're trying to get better, sharpen the saw. Like you said, all these right-hand and left-hand cuts, we want to sharpen the saw. The best way you could do that is by utilizing the information that you have within your environment, your ERP. Pronovos, this is why we exist. That's what we do. We can help you with that. There are other tools out there, Power BI off the shelf, use that. But I would just say, start with the data, right? Use the look at the data and try to change the culture of your organization to be more inquisitive. Ask more questions of the data. And if you can't get the answers, then you need to change something about your technology. You need to, get something that will help you get answers that you need.
I love that. Yeah, the data's there, or the ability to get the data is there for all of us. There's no excuse anymore. There's no more rocks to hide behind, guys. Yeah. Like the technology's there. We just need to embrace it and do a better job of allowing it to help us, right?
That's right. Well said, my man.
All right. Well, thank you. I've had a fun time, Bruce. Good to get to know you again. And we'll have to chat again down the road and do this again sometime.
I love it. Yeah, anytime. You let me know.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you for joining us for the Mobile Workforce Podcast by Foundation Software. To hear more episodes, visit us at workmax.com/Mobile Workforce Podcast or subscribe to the Mobile Workforce Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcast platform. And if you like the show, be sure to leave a 5-star review, share with your colleagues, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mobile Workforce Podcast.